Hello and welcome back to the channel with me, the Orienteering Kid, where today we're back in Gammelby for day 7 of the Swedish Forest Cup. Yes, we are back for the 7th day of the Swedish Forest Cup, a week organised by Christian Emberg and can be found here on the Tempo Simulator, the link to which can be found in the description of this video. Now we are back in Gammelby for a third time this week, and I don't really know what to expect with this one because the first time we were in Gammelby I struggled and the second time I was okay. So it's just going to be dealing with whatever stations he has thrown in for us, and I am excited to see what he has done. So let's just jump really straight into it as we go into the Swedish Forest Cup section, and we go to day 7, which today is back to the 1 to 2500 map with 5 metre contours, and it's 4 stations again with a 60-second penalty for any wrong answers. We have, as always, the zero tolerance of 4 metres, no side problems, and we also have the fact that the map was originally mapped at 1 to 15,000 and has just been enlarged for us, with the pictures generally being at a 120-degree angle, so we have to take that all into account when solving these problems, as things may look slightly different to how we want them. But that is part of the challenge, and I'm looking forward to taking on today. As always, my answers will be appearing in the top right hand corner of the screen, so you can see exactly what I'm putting at the moment that I do, correct or wrong as well, with the black and red letters. And yeah, with that, let's take on day 7 of the Swedish Forest Cup. And here is station 1. Okay, crags at the back, mainly, that's what we're going to be working with. There might be a couple of boulders, those crags. That could be 2 boulders, that would work, so that is probably a 0, I think. And I'm saying that crag is going to be Charlie, although are those the 2 boulders? That might fit better. Those could be the 2 boulders. Ah, okay, so that is now a 0. That knoll. So if that's the contour that goes round. I'm zeroing that, I don't really know where we are at that point. That's possibly... I've confused myself a lot here. That's not fun. Okay, if that's the... that's the boulder there, that works. So that puts that as another 0. Or is that boulder there, and so that one is delta. I'm going with that. And then the 2 knolls over there puts that as Charlie. So that was quite an interesting one to start with. I probably was correct in my first thinking, but I've done what I have done with many of these and changed my thinking halfway through from the correct to the wrong one. So I probably was right with the 0 to start with, and then we should have gone to Charlie with the second task, and I did just get confused from there. So we will have to have a look at that afterwards, but I think I was fine at the end with Delta and then Charlie. But yeah, we'll look at that afterwards, but we'll just move straight on now to station 2. Okay, 3 knolls at the back is what I'm guessing, with potentially a crag with Bravo. That's not 3 knolls, but that could be that. Crag. That knoll would then put it as... yeah, I can believe that's Delta with the hill of Echo next to it. That crag round there, I believe I'm going to stick with that being a 0. Knoll in front. See, alpha points at that one. Yeah, Alpha points at that one, and that's Alpha. So I think I was fine with that one, actually. It was just the fourth task that I was debating for a long time, because Echo looked like it could be on a null. However, we went to the Alpha crag for the final task, and I think that crag was pointing at the null right in front of us, and so the lump that Echo was on wouldn't have been mapped. But I think I was okay for that one, with Delta and Echo to start with, and then it took us to the left-hand side, and you debated whether we had got it right, but I stuck with it, and I think I was correct to stick with it for that one. So we were okay there. I think that was a much better station for me, but we will move on now to station 3. Okay, Foxtrot's on a crag, and then there's a load of bumps that we will see. That's the crag. I can't really see any bumps. That's okay, let's work with it. That's the knoll, that's the hill, that's that crag. So do I think Foxtrot's too far up? The hill comes down, I'm going with Foxtrot, and that's none of them. That's the boulder, but I think that's too far around. Northwestern side. Yeah, I think that's that back there. That boulder is Charlie, and the end of that hill, is it? That's got to be Alpha. So yeah, that was actually quite an interesting third station. I originally thought Foxtrot was going to be in the wrong place, but then I think when we went to task 3 with the boulder, I could see the boulder further back from Foxtrot, and so the first task would have been correct, with the third one being a 0. For me on the map, I thought that the features were too far away from the crag, and so I was struggling for a bit, but I think that's mainly because of the enlarged map, and they would have been mapped a bit further apart for 1 to 15,000 map, but I could see all the areas I wanted. That final task was the most interesting though, because I'd originally put Alpha on the crag. However, I could then see that the hill of Alpha and Bravo was all going to be mapped, and with Bravo being on the wrong part of it, Alpha was then on the other side, which was the side we wanted. So I think that one was fine as Alpha, and I think that was again another good station. But yeah, we now move straight on to the final station of the day, which is station 4. Okay, there seems to be some bare rock areas which will be the yellow parts potentially, or not. Those are 2 knolls potentially, or is that the crag? Those are the 2 knolls back there. That could work with the hill, boulder, knoll and knoll. I'm going with Foxtrot. Is that the knoll, or is that the spur, sorry? Or is that the spur with the knoll? I'll go with Bravo. I think that's the hill, and I think that's the knoll. And that boulder, I'm zeroing that because I can't see another boulder, although that may have tricked me to finish with, and maybe I did get all that wrong, but we will look at that afterwards. Let's go and have a look at this first station, which I did have a complete nightmare on, with 3 zeros to start it, and it's my longest station by far. But with this first task, I think we started looking at it in the correct way and then went to the wrong way afterwards. So what I saw here was a crag here and another crag here with Bravo and Delta on them, and then there's a small ridge here which could be a crag, but I think that's probably more going to be a contour, as it's not as big as the others. And then I saw a boulder here and another boulder further back, so I think these are the 2 boulders that are mapped here, and so I think this one is definitely a 0. But then when I came to the second task, I thought I got it all wrong, and I saw the Alpha and Charlie lumps and thought they were going to be the 2 boulders, and so we actually want the rocky bit further round, which is this rocky bit here, and a 0. However, I can now see that I was right the first time, and these are the 2 boulders, and so the massive crag that we come down on is actually the Bravo crag here, and so the answer to this one I believe is Bravo. So really the lesson here is I should have stuck with my first thinking, and from my times it seems I got even more confused when we moved to the third task, although I'm wondering whether this one is actually a 0 because I might want it over here. I think potentially Echo is on this boulder here, and so Foxtrot isn't that much further round from it, and I think really the knoll is going to be a lot further round from Foxtrot, and so it's probably that over there, and so I think think that one might actually be a 0. So I am happy with that one, and maybe it's only one mistake in this station, because we then go to this crag, and it's the crag below this boulder, so I'm happy with that one being delta, as we've said before. And then we go up to the right hand side, and I think this is where I realised that these two bumps over here are going to be the two nulls, and alpha is just on a boulder, potentially on this contour. So those are the two nulls, and we want the closer one, so I was happy with that one being Charlie. And that was a very interesting station to start with. It threw me quite a bit, but I think I was okay with it in the end. Just the one mistake, but with it taking 96 seconds, I think that was possibly my worst station of the day, but I think for some of you it won't have been too bad. We then come to station 2 though, and I think this one was a lot better for me. I originally saw 3 bumps here, and I thought I was going to see 3 bumps in a line on the map, but we only get 2 with the knoll and the hill. So are we in the right place? Now I then saw this crag and the other crag down here, and there is clearly a crag right in front of us with Alpha, and there is another crag down there with Bravo. Now this could be the 2 crags below it. However, I also saw the hill going out the back with Charlie potentially on a spur, and so looking at this, there isn't a hill really going this way, there isn't a 3rd crag behind the Bravo crag, and there isn't a knoll between the Alpha and Bravo crags here. So we must be on these crags here, looking up, and then we get the knoll to the right hand side of Charlie, which is definitely the Delta kite, so I'm happy with that one being Delta. And then I was very quick to say that Echo is on the hill next to it, and it is right at the top of that hill, and I'm confident with that one being Echo, before we then have our moment of doubt, and are we actually wrong with the previous 2? But I think we are secure in saying that there is a crag here with Alpha on it, and if Bravo is on that crag, where is the Alpha crag? So it's going to be a long way round to the left hand side, right through there, and so is definitely a 0, so I'm happy with that one. But then I came over here and did a lot of thinking as to whether this one was going to be Foxtrot or not, because there does seem to be a small bump potentially where Foxtrot is. However, I saw that the Alpha crag is going to be pointing at the knoll that we want, and really looking at this crag, it's not pointing anywhere near Foxtrot, it's pointing to this lump over here, and so I want the kite to be on this knoll, and so I think this one is a 0. But it did take me a while to find, and that could easily be Foxtrot, but I also think it's probably too close to the path to be it as well, so we will have to see that afterwards, but I'm confident that one is a 0. And then finally we go to the crag that we have said that Alpha is on the top of, and the control description says top of, so I'm happy with that one being Alpha. And I think that station was a bit easier than the first station, but I also think it required spotting the 2 crags here and realising we couldn't be on the 3rd crag behind. However, I think once you spotted that, the rest of it fitted together. So well done if you did manage to get that right. And then we come to station 3, and this first task took me a small while because I was mainly trying to work out how far along the crag Foxtrot was, as I'd seen the crag and I had seen all these lumps over here as these lumps around here, and they did look a bit far away from the crag, but they did all seem to fit in about the right place. So I was happy to say that the Alpha to Echo kites were going to be on these features round to the right hand side, and so it was deciding between Foxtrot or 0. However, looking where this crag comes downwards to meet the ground, Foxtrot is only just further back from the edge closest to us, and so I think it is clear that even though the map is orientated slightly differently to this crag, that is mainly because of the 120-degree photo, and I think it's orientated fine for the features right in front of us, and Foxtrot is only just back from the edge of the crag, so I think that one is fine as Foxtrot on the northern part of that crag. And then we go out to a hill and we want the southern part, and many of you might have just put Bravo straight away because you saw the hill and you saw the boulder potentially with Charlie right next to it. However, if that is the case, how do we explain this massive lump of hill here? Because there's clearly not another one between the crag and the hill that we're thinking Bravo might be on. So I was happy to say that this small hill is further down the massive hill we're stood on, and so this one is definitely a 0. And then we came back to this crag and I was debating my answer to 31, but I have stuck with it as a 0 because I then used the zoom and saw that there is a boulder behind this tree quite a far way back, and so Foxtrot is actually correctly placed for 31 and not all the way back on this boulder for 33. And so I'm happy again that that one is a 0, but that might have caught quite a few of you out, doubting your answers to 31. And then we come out to this boulder, and I think once we fitted the hill, the boulder, the knoll and the other hill as the hill, the boulder, the other knoll and the hill, we can clearly see that this one is going to be Charlie on the top of the boulder, so I'm happy with that one as Charlie. And then this is where I was having my debate, because I saw the hill and I saw that Bravo is placed on the right hand side of the hill, but the circle is centred on the left hand side of the hill. So I did almost zero this, but then I noticed that this whole hill probably includes the bit that Alpha's on as well, as I originally thought Alpha might be on this crag, but it doesn't really look crag-like, and the contour could be matching the whole of this, so I'm very happy with that one being Alpha on the northwestern part of that hill. And I think that was potentially an easier third station for today, but it had a couple of tricks which might have tripped some of you up, so we will have to see about that afterwards, but I didn't find it too bad personally. And then we come to the final station of the day, and I am wondering whether I've messed this up, but I'm just going to talk it through. What I saw to try and place me here was what I think is a hill here with Delta on it as this circular hill. So then once you've placed that, you can see there is a boulder back there with Charlie on it. We will come to that later. There is potentially a hill to the right hand side with potentially again a knoll that Alpha is on, and then we look behind this hill and you can see a knoll back there and another knoll to the right hand side of it there with Echo and Foxtrot on the two of them, and we want the right hand one. So I am fairly confident that this one is going to be Foxtrot. The only thing worrying me is I saw a bit more rock over here, but I think that might be the crag down below. So I'm happy to say at the moment that that one is Foxtrot, although it took me almost half the station to get there. And then we came over to this side and we wanted the spur, and again I'm fairly happy with this one being Bravo if we're believing the hill is here, and then that's the knoll, and so the spur is going to be further down, so that one should be Bravo. And then we come to the hill. Now the only thing slightly worrying me here is Delta is not on the exact centre of that hill and might be 4 metres away from the centre of that hill, so that one might be a 0. I did rush into it, it only took me 1.5 seconds, and we will have to see afterwards, but I'm fairly confident Delta is on that hill. And then we go to the knoll that we have already talked about as having Alpha on, so I'm fairly happy with that one being Alpha as well. And then we go out to this boulder, and this is where I was doubting myself for a long time, because I could only really see one boulder, and that is the boulder that Charlie's on, but it doesn't seem close enough to the Delta hill that I had placed as Delta. So maybe I had been seeing this all wrong, and maybe this isn't the hill at all. So what I did was I saw there was only one boulder, and I have zeroed it thinking there's another boulder behind, and maybe that's it there. Maybe I am right, or is that just the trees behind it and me thinking that's a boulder? No, that's just the trees behind it. So maybe Charlie is on this second boulder, it's on the northwestern side of that boulder, and maybe Echo's actually on the boulder closer to us. No, that seems a lot further back, that's wrong. The other option here is that Delta is on the first boulder, Charlie's on the second boulder, and the hill is here, and so I have got a couple wrong potentially, but we will have to see that afterwards. I'm going to stick with Delta being on the hill, but I could easily be wrong. This is where I'm least confident in the day, I think, and there could be an extra couple of mistakes, but I think our position that we will see in a minute will show that. But overall I think that was another good day in Gambleby. I think the stations for this one were very good. I've possibly got 2 clean stations in there, it's just the first and the last ones I'm debating, or I know I've got one wrong in the first station, and yeah, I think I've probably done a bit better than some previous days. So let's go and have a look at the current results for today, and you will see that I am in 56th. Now that isn't too bad at all. I'm very happy with that actually. It probably shows I have made at least one mistake in station 4, but I think I'm confident about station 2 and 3 being correct. So that is where I am for now. We will see what happens as the day plays out, but I will join you afterwards for the overall results. And we are back again to see that I have dropped a bit down to 97th. Now I don't think that's too bad at all. I'm quite happy with that actually. With 3 mistakes for today, just over 400 seconds was my total time. However, looking at it, it was only a maximum of 1 mistake per station, so I am fairly happy with that. So I am very happy with that. I didn't have any really bad stations like I have in previous days. Firstly though, it is well done to Tappenny for winning his second event of the series by a margin of 17 seconds. I think that's a fairly good margin. It seems that only 4 people in the top 20 managed to do it with no mistakes, so it does show that today was a very tough day again. In terms of where Tappenny won the event though, it's definitely looking like this third station was one where most people made their mistakes today, especially in the top 20, so I think he did well there. And also his quickest station being station 2, there were some quite quick times there in the top guys, but there were some fairly slow ones, so I think those 2 stations specifically were where he won it. Let's go have a look at the station percentages now, and we with Station 1. It's actually looking very green, but this final task might be the worst answered here, and they are all in the 80% apart from this final task, with 55% of you going with Charlie, but 209 thought it was Alpha. And I wonder whether this was potentially a mispunch, because Alpha, Bravo and Charlie were all close together, and if you read them in terms of where they were along the hill rather than the way that we could look at them, you would definitely see that Charlie was the furthest left along the hill, and so potentially think it was Alpha. But it does seem that it was a debate between Alpha and Charlie here, with not many really going with 0 or Bravo, so we will have a look at that. But again, the rest of the station was very well answered, so well done if you did manage to get the other 4 correct. And then we go on to Station 2, and it's again looking quite green, but this 4th task is probably going to be the worst answered, and it still isn't below 50% because it is at 50%, with half of you, or 379 of you, going with Foxtrot, but quite a few, being 244, thought it was a 0. I think this was potentially a task that I got wrong, because I thought that the crag that Alpha was on was going to be pointing to the actual knoll that we wanted, so we will have to have a look at that, but it does seem like Foxtrot was on the correct knoll. But again, the rest of the tasks here were very well answered, so we don't really need to go over much of that because people seem to know exactly where they were, so very well done. And then we go on to Station 3, and already this 3rd task is looking very red. Is it going to be the lowest percentage of the week? And it probably is, with the percentage here being below 10%. It's our first single digit percentage of 9%, with 74 people going with Delta, but 504, which is the vast majority of you, went with Charlie. And me also going with Charlie, I can agree with you. I think all the features seem to fit perfectly, with Charlie being on a boulder and Delta on the knoll behind, but it does seem like Delta was actually on the boulder, so we will have to have a look at that one because that was very badly answered there. But actually the rest of the tasks in this station were again very well answered. Maybe this last task we'll have a brief look on because it's only just in 60%, but really again there aren't many tasks today that I will have to look over, so very well done for doing a great job today so far. This may change though as we go into the final station, and I think this is already looking a lot redder with the first and last tasks. Maybe I somehow managed to get it all correct, and there are 3 tasks here below 50%, being the first, the middle and the last, so maybe some of you had a kind of idea with the middle 2, and it looked like a similar amount of people, as those 2 were the ones off to the left, and I think they were a lot clearer. This first task, 234 thought it was Foxtrot, 254 thought it was a 0, and there were quite a few for Charlie as well. Now for me, getting a grasp of this station was very difficult, so I'm not really surprised that quite a lot of you got the first one wrong. I think this was probably the hardest one in placing ourselves. And then it was a similar thing with the 3rd task, trying to place us on Delta, but 314 managed to, but 171 thought it was 0, and 137 thought it was Bravo. Probably not the 456 that thought the second one was Bravo. However, I definitely thought afterwards that this one could have been a 0, with Delta being on a part of the hill rather than on the centre of the hill, but it does turn out it was Delta, so we will have another look at that one with it being 42%. And then ending on the final task for today was also a very tough one. 315 thought it was a 0, but 185 put Echo and 177 put Charlie as well. Charlie to me was the clear option, but I'm also not surprised 185 put Echo, because that could have been on the back boulder with Foxtrot being the other boulder, but I think that was definitely on one of the knolls with Foxtrot, as I pointed out earlier. But this has definitely shown that the final station was the hardest of the day, so even if you just managed to get one of those right, I think you have done a very good job. But let's go have another look now at the harder tasks for today, and there actually aren't too many to look at today. Now, we have already pointed out my mistake for the second task, so I don't think we need to go over that again. That one is clearly Bravo. It was this final task where a lot of you actually put Alpha, and because so many of you got the Bravo one right in 12, I don't think this was an issue of misplacement. I think potentially some of you might have mispunched, because in knowing Bravo's here, Alpha is too close to the crag to be this knoll, and so we want the one further back being Charlie. But Charlie in terms of the hill is the furthest along the hill this way, and so if you were looking at it in that sense it would be Alpha, but we do have to remember that they are going across the photograph, and so it's Alpha, Bravo, Charlie. I suppose the other way you could have seen it is there is one lump here potentially and then a second one there if you don't spot the one behind the Charlie kite, but I think this is a boulder rather than knoll, and I appreciate they are hard to distinguish, but I also think it's smaller in height than the kite and so isn't going to be mapped. I appreciate that can be hard to see, but I think that is definitely the case, and this this one is definitely Charlie. So well done if you did manage to notice that. With station 2, it was this task which was the hardest, and to me, I definitely thought that going off the line that Alpha was, we were going to this knoll here, and so with it being a sensible distance away from the path as well, in my opinion, I thought that we were actually going here. This lump isn't going to be mapped, and so it can't be Foxtrot. But it has turned out this is Foxtrot, so how are we going to tell that properly? Well, you can see after the Foxtrot lump, there is another lump here, and so this is probably going to be the first knoll very close to the ride here. And so moving back diagonally, that does work as being the Foxtrot knoll as the one we want, and then this knoll here being the one down here. I think that was quite hard to tell though, and especially with the wide angle photo, I thought that that crag was going to point at this knoll. But well done if you did manage to spot all three of the lumps and say that Foxtrot is on the middle one, because I think that was really how you were meant to solve that task. And then with this station, it was again very well answered, but we had this task as 34 and it only had 9% correct answers, as most of you, like me, went with Charlie. And to be honest, I'm still seeing it as Charlie, but I am going to have to believe it is Delta and trying to explain it in some way. Now the only thing I can is saying that Charlie, looking at it properly, does not look like a boulder. It looks more like a small hill and is too small to be mapped by the looks of things, as Alpha and Bravo are on either end of this big hill, and with Delta on the boulder, this Charlie lump is going to be between the two about here. And the only thing to help us see that Delta is potentially in the right place is the Echo hill. With Echo being at the foot of it, that angle could look about correct and actually does fit a lot better than this lump being the boulder, because I would have wanted the hill to be about here thinking about it. So maybe this one is a lot clearer as Delta. I was just rushing too much and it did trick most of you by the looks of things, but I think as there is meant to be a knoll behind the boulder and we just saw the boulder and the knoll as Charlie and Delta. However, there does seem to be another knoll which I am struggling to see, but we are meant to go down the hill. You can see it drops off here, and so maybe the knoll is just a bit further down the hill. With 5-meter contours, the gap between here and here is going to be 5 meters, so that is going to be quite a steep hill, and the knoll won't be very high at all, so it will be disappearing down the hill, and so Delta is definitely on the boulder rather than Charlie. But that was a very hard task. It was a good task to throw in, and I'm glad he did, because that to me was the task which distinguished the better from the best today. So if you did manage to get that right, I think you've done a very good job, so very well done for doing that. But then in coming to this final station, I think most of you managed to grasp Bravo and Alpha on the left hand side. It was just the first, third and final tasks, and I can definitely agree at least that this hill looks too big to be this small hill here. However, I think it kind of has to be. Where else are we going to be? There is a spur along this side with Bravo and the knoll of Alpha. That fits over here, and in terms of fitting all the rocks and knolls out to the right hand side, there is potentially one boulder here, and then there are two kind of areas of bare rock which don't look like boulders, and so are probably going to be the two knolls. Once you believe that, everything seems to fit with the hill of Delta. I know it's very ambiguous and it is quite hard to see in the competition, so I think that's why the percentages are low, but that also seems to fit quite nicely with this other bit of rock here being the crag. And with the wide angle photo, they are at different angles, but because that's right at the edge of the photo, that is about a 60-degree angle and definitely still fits with an 120-degree photo. But then once I've pointed all of that out, we want the right hand of the two knolls as we said before, and that one is definitely Foxtrot. But again, getting a grasp of that straight away in the station was hard, and I definitely struggled after to see that fitted properly. But in believing that and knowing that the next one is Bravo, we then come to the hill, and that is really only going to be this right in front of us. The only thing I was debating afterwards, because it took me 1.5 seconds to put Delta, so I was very quick with it, was whether it was going to be on the wrong part, with this hill actually being 8 meters long potentially and Delta not being directly in the middle. However, actually saying that out loud, I've realised that this hill isn't 8 meters long at all, and so even if that is the whole hill mapped, if it's going to be in the centre of it, there is not a 4-meter gap between Delta and the centre of that hill, and so that one is definitely Delta because it's on that hill. Again, that was very hard to spot though. You had to believe it was there, and really it did require fitting all the detail in the background to then see, oh, that's going to be the hill. So again, I'm not really surprised. That was quite a low percentage. And then this final task again, I think quite a lot were with Echo, and I can see that scenario with Foxtrot and Echo being the two boulders. However, we have already established that those are the two nulls. And I can also see quite a lot of people going with Charlie, with potentially Echo being the front boulder. But looking at it there, it is clear to me at least that the rock of Echo is going to be behind the rock of Charlie. And so Charlie is on the front rock, and there are clearly no rocks between Charlie and the hill of Delta. And so Charlie must be on this boulder here, and there is going to be another boulder behind it. However, I think that one was the most ambiguous, because the gap between the Charlie boulder and the hill of Delta seems a lot bigger in the photo than on the map here. So I'm not really surprised. Still quite a lot of you put Charlie. I definitely slowed up for this task, being 13 seconds. It wasn't my longest task in the station, but it was as slow as me trying to get a grasp of the spur on the left hand side. So if you did manage to get that station fully right, or even a couple of those tasks, I think you did very well. And actually, I think today was a much better answer day than some of the previous ones. So it definitely shows that as a group, we are definitely improving a lot on our forest tempo. And I think a lot of thanks does need to go to Christian for continuing to set some very interesting and intricate problems as we've gone through the week. And I'm excited to see, again, as I keep saying, what these final 2 days are going to bring us. But for now, let's go and have a look at the overall results for the series so far. And you will see as it sends me down that I am down in 78th now. I think I've climbed slightly since yesterday, I can't quite remember, but with the 97th today and a fairly good score, that's taken me up slightly. So I am really happy with how I'm doing so far. I think just being in the top 100 is a great achievement, and just really being able to complete these events anyway, however well you do, is a very good achievement. But in terms of the top guides this week, Severin is still holding on to his first place. He's now 13 points ahead of Alessio with 2 more days to go, so I think he's almost certainly winning this series. But Alessio is in second, 3 points ahead of Antti, and then Antti is 6 points ahead of Tapani. So I think really anything can happen with the final 2 days, and really apart from Severin, who I think has very clearly to me won this series, it's going to be very close for the second and third places. So we are going to have to follow that tomorrow and the final day. In terms of the clubs, we have Massey still taking the lead, 55 points ahead of MTV Season. So again, I think they're fairly secure in their first place after winning today's event again. And then we have MTV Season in second, over 30 points now ahead of MDoc in third place, who are 30 points ahead of Silkeborg. And so this club series is actually slightly more spread out than the competitors, but I still think anything could change going into these final 2 days. Massey are almost certainly going to win it, but I think second and third places are still up for grabs for any of the next 4 teams at least. So we will have to follow this again to see how that plans out. And then finally with the countries, the Finns are still holding on to their lead, 74 points ahead of the Swedes, who are then 30 points ahead of the Italians. So again, I think a winner is definitely obvious there, as the Finns have still won every event, or no, they haven't actually, they came second today, but only just. They've almost won every event so far, so I think they are very secure in their first place, with the Swedes quite a long way behind them. But I think it is definitely still a fight for second between the Swedes and the Italians. The Germans are probably too far behind the Italians to get a third place, but fourth place is still very good. And yeah, that does bring us to the end of the 7th day. With 2 more days to go, I again am very excited to see exactly what Christian has got in store for us today, and you will have to make sure you join me again tomorrow for the 8th day. But for now, that is the end of today's video. Thank you again for watching. If you would like to like the video as always and subscribe to the channel, it just helps me out a lot with the YouTube algorithms, but also you get notified whenever I release a video. However, if you aren't getting those, you do need to make sure you press the bell next to the subscribe button and click all. And also remember to be sharing these videos. We are still going to try and get 1,000 people to compete in one event at some point in the future on the simulator, so do make sure you are telling all your orienteering friends who aren't already on the simulator competing what to do to register and how to join in. And also, as always, remember to be commenting down below any extra analysis that you think I've missed from this video, or any extra bits you want me to add, and I will join you again tomorrow for day 8 of the Swedish Forest Cup.